Welcome to the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge. I'm your host, Joshua Smith, and today we're diving into Vermont and New Hampshire's fascinating weather history with WYKR's good friend, Mark Breen, the senior meteorologist from Fairbanks Museum in St. Johnsbury. He will also give us some predictions for the year ahead. This is a great way to kick off 2025. Plus, we're thrilled to bring back Gary Moore with his thoughts in the outdoor segment after more than 30 years. And you don't want to also miss out. We have the Outdoor Edge weekend forecast from the Fairbanks Museum to help you plan for your weekend adventures. So stay tuned for this insightful episode. As promised, we are talking to the senior meteorologist at the Fairbanks Museum and Planetarium, the Mark Breen. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Josh. How are you?
So you've been, literally years and years we've been able to hear your voice over the air with doing the reports and also doing the Friday morning shows with Steve. But we kind of wanted to take this time just to kind of get to know, Mark Breen as a person and also kind of hear some of your insights on what you feel, 2025 is going to look like.
Sure.
First of all, what kind of sparked your passion for meteorology and astronomy?
Yeah, well, meteorology goes way back. I was in school, but also I would say Boy Scouts were probably a major influence, simply because my Boy Scout troop mostly was just a bunch of my friends who wanted to go camping. So we really weren't in it for the whole Boy Scout, merit badge kind of thing, but we had to get some merit badges, so I went through the book and found the easiest ones I could find. I got all the way to W for weather. and so I did my weather merit badge, but in the process, and I think it was kind of interestingly designed, you had to write down the weather for 3 weeks, and you had to make a prediction. It never said you had to be right, but you wrote down the weather. Well, in the process of following the weather over 3 weeks, I kind of got intrigued by it, and I didn't stop after 3 weeks. In fact, that was before high school. I actually continued a daily weather record all the way through high school, and that was, by then I was absolutely convinced that I was going to be a meteorologist, and so I followed through with that. The astronomy came from working at the museum. I really didn't have much in terms of astronomy, but of course the museum has a planetarium, and part of my job was to do a live presentation in the planetarium once a week. So I had to learn, the stars and the constellations, and once again, I kind of got intrigued and got more and more into it, and so eventually, within actually a fairly short time of being at the museum, became the planetarium director, and so both have ended up being quite a passion, and both work and personally for the past 40 years.
Obviously, astronomy and meteorology are two separate sciences, but there are some kind of overlap as a Venn diagram kind of piece goes.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, you want it to be clear, of course, to see whatever you're seeing outside in terms of astronomy. So that's probably the biggest crossover, and that has served me well in terms of trying to pinpoint those nights that are better for observing. But also, there are some connections in terms of things like the sun and its influence on the Earth's weather systems and climate systems, and so that's something that's intrigued me. I've used the Fairbanks Museum's very long weather record. It goes back to the 1890s, and take a look at kind of a connection between the sun and that to see, if there's any way that I can use that, say, going forward to make some predictions.
Now, I was just listening to another podcast that was talking about that NASA just launched back in 2018, they launched a probe to actually study the sun.
That's right, yes. And one of the things is the sun is so obvious and right there, and yet it's one of the things that we know the least about because it is very difficult to study. I mean, you can't put anything too close to it, so they've actually, over the past several decades, come up with better and better designs to get something closer to the sun and get better, more detailed information.
Now, so are you when you mentioned that you're in the Boy Scouts, you grew up in the Northeast Kingdom?
No, actually, grew up, born in northern New York, grew up as a young kid in Connecticut, northeastern Connecticut, and then moved up here when I went to school. Actually, I lived in Vermont, back when I was in kindergarten and first grade, and our family had made some great friends, so when I came back to school, I actually came back as part of a hunting trip up here, and then I've really, since the late 70s, I've just stayed up here.
Okay, and so when you went to Linden State College?
That's right, yes.
Okay, all right. And so talk to us a little bit, how do you balance your work in both the meteorology and astronomy then?
Well, I always think of my weather as a very sort of routine type of thing, and that's always early in the morning. I'm the early morning weather guy. I've never minded getting up at about 3:15 in the morning, and so that's kind of my regular thing that I do. And so the morning, I have this routine of doing weather forecasts, and then the astronomy part kind of fits in later in the day, but also one of the things that I like about astronomy is obviously it blends into the evening as well, so it's much more kind of relaxed as far as that goes. So weather is my routine. Astronomy, well, it just fits in as it needs to.
Okay. Now, I'm really curious, too. Is there any unique or little-known facts about northeastern Vermont and northwestern New Hampshire weather that you just love sharing with other people?
Well, I'm actually always finding out stuff, and sometimes it comes from some of our listeners. I can remember a number of years ago, I was in Reigate. I was talking about weather lore as one of my favorite subjects, about old-time, weather sayings like "red at night, sailor's delight." And in the process, I always ask the audience, do you have any weather sayings that you like? And this fellow from Reigate came up and he said, well, I have two. He said, one, if the horses yawn, it's going to rain. I said, okay. He said the other, he said, a dry sprinkle will never get you wet.
Huh.
It's kind of hard to argue with that.
Right. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk more with Mark Breen about the Fairbanks Museum and some meteorology, so stay tuned.
It's a St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge on YKR Country.
At R&L Archery, we know it's not just about the thrill of the hunt or the size of the fish. It's about the moments that matter most, the traditions passed down from one generation to the next, and the stories told by the fire long after the sun is set. It's about the journey, the memories, and the time spent together with friends and family, because these are the moments that truly last a lifetime. R&L Archery, where every adventure begins. Come create your story.
Miles Supply, your stop for all your general business products, paper towels, toilet paper, first aid kits, and more. Purchase your paper and soap products from Miles, and they'll install the dispensers for free. Do you own a salon, restaurant, coffee shop, or gym, making a monthly run to the big box store for your business supplies? Save time with Miles Supply. Call today for a sales visit, 476-3963, or walk directly into their showroom, 143 Boynton Street next to Spalding High School. Miles Supply, family-owned and building relationships since 1954.
The Autosaver Group's St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram asks, do your outdoor adventures take you to where you wish you had a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive? At St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram, explore their vast inventory of adventure-savvy four-wheel drives and all-wheel drive vehicles, ready for you to drive at home. Plus, every St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram deal includes the Big Deal Plus, which is a 2-year unlimited scheduled maintenance plan, which includes free state inspections for life. Stop in today in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, or shop St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram online at stjohnsburycdjr.com.
Hi, this is Jay Davis, co-founder of NortheastKingdomOnline.com. As Northern New England's leading digital marketing agency, we will help your business harness the power of SEO, social media, and beyond to enhance your online presence. Your customers are looking for you. Work with our team of marketers to build a complete online marketing strategy. Visit NortheastKingdomOnline.com to see how we can heighten your brand. Achieve more with NortheastKingdomOnline.com.
All right, we're back, and we're talking to Mark Breen, the senior meteorologist over at the Fairbanks Museum. And so, Mark, let's talk a little bit more about the Fairbanks Museum and its meteorology. You mentioned before the break that the Fairbanks Museum has decades and decades of information that has been collected over the years. Talk to us a little bit. What role does the Fairbanks Museum play in documenting and preserving some of Vermont's weather history?
Right, so that actually goes back to the founder of the museum, Franklin Fairbanks. Now, of course, he is part of the Fairbanks family. The Fairbankses invented the platform scale. It was actually his uncle that made the specific invention. But as a result, he became very interested in science in general. He was known for collecting things just even as a kid, coming home with his pockets full of rocks and that sort of thing. But one of the things that he did was he started observing the weather as early as 1858, so well before there was even a museum.
Wow.
Now, once the museum was built, starting in 1890, he was still doing some observing at home, but as he was getting on in years, he transferred that to the museum just because he wanted those records to continue on. So that's how they got started. And this daily observation, which, obviously you have to start somewhere, that has become, as it turns out, the longest continuous record in the United States.
Wow.
Yes, and it's our second longest to make that. The longest belongs to Blue Hill Observatory just south of Boston. But yes, we are the second longest continuous observation in the same location. I mean, there are other places that have been observing longer, but as an example, Burlington, Vermont, but they've actually moved their weather observations 6 different locations covering a distance of over 10 miles. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And so because right now the weather team is you, it's Lawrence Hayes, it's Chris Kurdak, and then you have a new person, Megan Duncan, who's been on the Air Force. So how do you and your colleagues kind of work together to ensure accurate forecasting for our listeners?
So one of the things that I do, because I kind of start the day, so to say, is I collect all that information, and then I send out what I've prepared out to Lawrence or Megan or Chris, whoever's on duty next, and then they take a look at that, plus what they're seeing, and then we may have some kind of back and forth. Did you see this? Or I was thinking that the storm might go this way instead of that way. And so we have, sort of, it's an extended handoff, if you want to think of it that way, where we kind of exchange some ideas and then the next person takes it on. And then likewise, in the morning, I look at what they were doing for work during the end of the afternoon, and that kind of starts me on my morning forecast that way.
Okay. And so I know that there's different types of models. There's like a European forecast model and then a North American. Like isn't that there's like different meteorology models that you kind of work from as well?
Right. So I guess one way to think about that is that models are one of the tools we use, but I've often been a big proponent of looking out the window. And that had to do with some of my very first forecasts at the museum, where literally somebody asked me, "Didn't you look out the window this morning?" Because one of the challenges is that, of course, anytime that you're forecasting beyond your window, so to say, if you're forecasting even 20 miles away, you're not specifically seeing what's going on in that spot. So having observations and that type of thing has always been very helpful. And so that was the idea, is that as I gathered up more information and kind of did this whole idea, is that you had what was going on now and also the kinds of patterns that we usually see. Actually, some recent events where cold air has been stuck in the eastern side of Vermont and western New Hampshire, but it's warmed up on the western side of Vermont. That's a typical thing, but computer models don't pick that up very well. On the other hand, computer models are really helpful, very critical in terms of of what we do in terms of the forecasting. And in fact, I think especially some of the more recent computer models have been able to be a little bit more detailed about the location of rain and showers and the timing of them. And I find it makes a forecast much more useful. For example, years ago, I didn't really have much of an option because of the information that was available. Partly sunny, chance of showers. Well, that's an accurate forecast, but not necessarily a useful one. And so today, what I'm more able to do is to say, there'll be some sun this morning, and then the chances of showers come this afternoon. So I'm a little more specific that way. It gives people a chance, if they're trying to figure out what to do outside, well, I'll get stuff done in the morning, and then chances of rain this afternoon, that type of thing.
Right. Now, so how has technology kind of transformed the way that you and your team forecast the weather?
Yeah, well, so obviously the technology in terms of the computer models, and that continues to change. The other thing, and this goes back, and I think almost everybody can relate to this, the big change that took place 4 years ago, the pandemic, and that changed where we do some of our forecasting. Almost everybody on the team has the ability to do forecasting remotely. In other words, they have sort of like a small home studio as well as being able to come into the museum. So that's been a change. We've also been able to digitize those same weather records that I was talking about that go back to the 1890s. By digitizing those records, we can analyze them much more easily, and so I'm much quicker to be able to say that it's been a warmer or colder month or year, or how unusual a particular weather event has been.
And isn't there just some technology, even to this day, still works really well? I'm just thinking about how every grandparent's house has that that three, that 3-dial thing, that weather station that's in like every grandparent's homes, the barometer, humidity, temperature readings.
You're aging me. I've got one that's sitting on the wall right here. Yes, and truly, some very basic pieces of information. What is the air pressure? What is the wind doing? I think that's another key thing. I actually use that information. This is going way back into high school and the early days of computers, when I actually created in high school a computer forecasting system.
Oh, wow. All right, so we're going to take another quick break, and when we get back, we have more questions for senior meteorologist Mark Breen. We're going to talk more about that northern New England weather and the 2025 outlook. So stay tuned.
It's the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge on YKR Country.
This is Bob McGee from Wild Vermont Customs. From mud to snow, water to road, powered or pedaled, our custom fabrication shop can make it look great. With paint, hydro dip, powder coat, media blasting your restoration project, metal artwork, or your hunting trophies. Come see what we can do for you. Gabe, what can we do for the hunting trophies?
We can dip Euro skulls, make custom plaques or mounts.
Wild Vermont Customs, East Redgate, Vermont. On the web at wildvt.com.
Check out our Facebook page for pictures.
Gateway Sports there in Wells River is a gun store that will speak your language. Gary has one of the biggest selections of firearms that you'll ever need. Just take a short ride down to Gateway Sports. They are in Wells River on Route 302, just before the bridge. Don't blink, because you might miss it. You'll find Gary. He'll treat you right. I've known him for a long time, and he always will.
Stop by to see what the daily specials are. Stock up on your favorite ammunition, including some of the hard-to-get stuff, and ask about how you can get started reloading ammo yourself at Gateway Sports, Wells River.
Welcome back to the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge. I'm your host, Joshua Smith. And as we mentioned at the top of the hour, that we are thrilled to bring back Gary Moore with his thoughts on the outdoor segment, which has been about over 30 years since this has been broadcasted on WYKR. So he has split up. He has 2 4-minute segments, and the first one's about ice, being the winter ice, and then the second one is going to be about rabbits. So for the first one, we're gonna play for you now his first segment on winter ice.
Hello, this wonderful second day of 2025. It's been 30 plus years since Thoughts on the Outdoors appeared weekly on WYKR. I'm glad to be back on a trial basis. We'll see how it goes. Winter need not be a season to dread. It is not necessary to confine oneself to the living room chair. With proper dress and a positive attitude, winter can be a delightful season for outdoor activity. After all, why would we live here if we didn't get out and enjoy it? Ice fishing is one way to spend free time. It's a good way to get a great meal of fresh fish. The equipment needed is quite simple and very inexpensive, so anyone can try it. The recent arrival of cold temperatures has formed early season ice on many ponds and lakes and rivers. However, many places have little ice or not enough to be safe. Always check the ice before you go on and at regular intervals. Often there is much less ice over reefs, springs, around docks, and places where there is a current. Though all ice is potentially dangerous, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Research and Engineering Laboratory down in Hanover offers a rule of thumb on ice thickness. They say there should be a minimum of 6 inches of hard ice before individual foot travel and 8 to 10 inches of hard ice for snow machine or all-terrain vehicle travel. Keep in mind that thick ice does not always mean safe ice. It is possible for ice to be thick but not strong because of varying weather conditions. Weak ice is formed when warming trends break down ice, then the slushy surface refreezes. Be especially careful on areas with currents, such as inlets, outlets, and spring holes, where the ice can be dangerously thin. Just ask Jay Holden, who nearly drowned last winter below the McIndoes Dam. I say always carry an ice spud or chisel to check on the ice as you proceed. My cardinal rule is don't drive on the ice. I used to, but not anymore. Every year, several motor vehicles go through the ice in Vermont and New Hampshire, and people have drowned as a result. Just as in hiking, it's a good idea to have someone know where you intend to fish and when you expect to be home. I also used to ice fish alone, but not now. Having someone with you increases the safety significantly. I always carry a set of hand spikes draped around my neck to help me work my way onto the ice if I fall through. It's also a good idea to carry a safety line that can be thrown to someone who has gone through the ice. If you do happen to fall in, don't panic. Move or swim back to the place you fell in where you know the ice was solid. Lay both your arms on the unbroken ice and kick hard. And this is a place where those ice picks or ice spikes, depending on what you call them, really work well. You can just drive them into the ice and pull yourself up. If you fall in, that's the best way to get out. Once you're up, don't try to stand up. Roll away from the hole until you reach solid ice. The old adage, thick and blue, tried and blue, thin and crispy, way too risky. Keep that in mind. It'll help keep you safe.
And we're back. We were talking to Mark Breen, the senior meteorologist over at the Fairbanks Museum and Planetarium. And Mark, before our break, we were talking about just, some very, basic technology and some advanced technology that the Fairbanks Museum is being able to utilize. Right. One of the things that we do here at the WYKR, we still have a weather phone, and which is great because what we do is that we print out the weather forecast that we get from the Fairbanks Museum, and then we kind of read it over the air on our answering machine services. Mm-hmm. And you did bring up before the break about wind, because it's really interesting for those that might just be more concerned about the weather, just like, is it going to rain? What's the sky going to look like? You always have on our weather forecast the wind direction and the wind speed. Explain to our listeners why that's important when it comes to weather as well.
Sure. Well, of course, the wind, it's air that's moving, but it's where the air is coming from and going to. And so one of the things that we think about just as a general idea about the weather has to do with where is that air coming from. In other words, if that air is coming straight out of northern Quebec, obviously that's going to be cold air coming in here. Or if it's coming in off the ocean, well, that's a very different influence with the moisture and the temperature of the water there. And so by detailing out, the wind direction, that really, can kind of give us an additional clue as to what's going on. And I even think of it, one of the things that we sometimes see on the top of could be a church steeple or a barn roof or sometimes even a house, a wind vane, or what's really called a weather vane. And it's called a weather vane because it really can indicate, depending on which direction the wind is coming from, what kind of weather you can expect.
Oh, so like you say, if it's coming from the north, it's going to be cooler. If it's coming from, and then usually is it normally wind coming from the west? Is that usually more mild or?
Well, it all depends on what's going on in the west, but my general rule of thumb is obviously north is cold and south is warm. West is usually dry and east is wet.
Okay.
And, of course, then you just have a various combination between the two. Now, in the summertime, it also changes. A west wind in the summers tends to be a warm wind only because the middle part of the country tends to be warm, whereas in this time of year, we can see temperatures that are quite cold, let's say in North Dakota. Well, a west wind brings that air our way, so a west wind in the winter can be quite cold.
Right. Now, it's because you're based in northern New England, is there any specific kind of stereotype of meteorologists in northern New England? Do we have... Are other meteorologists jealous of our weather, or are we, comparatively speaking, pretty predictable?
Well, I wouldn't say we're predictable. In fact, one of the biggest challenges has to do with the mountains and valleys here. And so I tend to find that the people that like to forecast here, they very often are involved in just outdoor activities in general. So they may enjoy skiing or hiking or, various activities throughout the year. And so knowing the weather, obviously that's going to give them a much better idea about which days to take advantage of some of those activities. But which is very different. There are some meteorologists, and they really love tropical weather, for example. They love hurricanes and that type of thing. And so they would tend to gravitate more toward the southern United States. And I'm not really sure what attracts any meteorologist to California other than enjoying sunshine. But.
Right. And so, as you mentioned, too, so forecasting for northern New England is particularly challenging, or?
Well, one of the things that I learned early on when I first came up here, there were certain phrases that people used that I actually thought were great descriptions of the weather here. For example, one of my friends, this is going back years ago, but he told me it's clearing up cloudy today. And I thought, that's a very odd expression. But what he was saying was, as the storm goes by, it was still cloudy behind the storm, which is very different than even if you go down to southern New Hampshire or southern New England. When the storm goes by, it clears out and it's sunny. But the mountains here make a big difference in terms of how things work. Another thing, and I think folks certainly locally can very much identify with this, and this came from my meteorology professor. Very first year at Linden State, he told me every morning in September, forecast fog.
Huh.
And then you may have to take it out on a few days, but one of the things that happens from about mid to late August on through early October, almost every morning down next to the rivers, it's foggy. And it all has to do with the days getting longer, the moisture from the rivers, and so you end up with these areas of fog next to the rivers almost every morning.
Huh.
And so those kinds of things mean that the weather is very localized here. Snow, we can get a storm that, you get across the Orange Heights or up toward Bethlehem in New Hampshire, and you're going to end up with a foot of snow, and then you get right down, along the Connecticut River, and you may only get 2 or 3 inches. So elevation plays a key role as well.
We're going to take another quick break, and we have another Gary Moore segment of his thoughts on the outdoors. And once we get back, we'll continue our conversation with Mark Breen.
It's a St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge on YKR Country.
At R&L Archery, we know it's not just about the thrill of the hunt or the size of the fish. It's about the moments that matter most, the traditions passed down from one generation to the next, and the stories told by the fire long after the sun is set. It's about the journey, the memories, and the time spent together with friends and family, because these are the moments that truly last a lifetime. R&L Archery, where every adventure begins. Come create your story.
At Red Clover Bikes in Fairleigh, Vermont, we know that a bike is more than just a ride. It's an extension of who you are. With financing available on top-tier Trek bicycles, e-bikes, and a team that's all about making biking accessible and fun, we help you make the most of the roads and the trails that make this little spot of heaven special. Whether you're looking to enhance your bike's performance or need expert advice on the latest cycling gear, we've got you covered. So come visit us in Fairleigh at Red Clover Bikes, where your adventure begins.
Welcome back. Rabbit hunting is enjoyable and certainly good exercise. But let me make it clear, I know we're not hunting rabbits in northern Vermont or New Hampshire, but that is what we all say. Actually, we're hunting hare, snowshoe hare to be precise. However, I've never heard anyone say they were going hare hunting or that they had hare hounds. Many hunters, myself included, enjoy brisk winter days snowshoeing in the woods or swamps with a shotgun. Snowshoe hare are the favorite game sought by many, and the season remains open through March 12th in Vermont and March 31st in New Hampshire. I do not own any hunting dogs, and my St. Bernard would never be mistaken for a hunting dog. However, several of my friends have beagles that love to pursue snowshoe hare. Thus, I need only ask, and I get to join them on nice winter days. Snowshoe hare can be found in much of Vermont, but my favorite places to hunt are in the Northeast Kingdom counties of Essex, Orleans, and Caledonia. That is an area of big woods with very little posting and much public land. Several of the Fish and Wildlife Management areas in the kingdom are prime snowshoe habitat, as is the Nolhegan Basin of the Conde National Wildlife Refuge. Near the Canadian border in Norton and Holland is the Bill Sladek Wildlife Management Area. It is a place you want to be sure you have a good compass and a map, as it can easily get turned around. On the south side of Route 105, connecting Island Pond and Bloomfield, are Wentlock and West Mountain Wildlife Management areas. That is where I have hunted snowshoe hare more than in any other area of the state. That may be just because I'm intimately familiar with the two areas. Still further south is the Victory Basin Wildlife Area in the town of Victory. It is bisected by the Moose River and includes some thick cover as well as open hardwoods. To the west in Caledonia County is Streamville Brook Wildlife Management Area, which is at a higher elevation but easily accessible by road. Back on 105 on the north side, across from Wentlock, is the Nolhegan Basin of the Conte National Wildlife Refuge. It too is a good bet for those after snowshoe hare. A day spent on snowshoes in pursuit of snowshoe hare is a good way to get some exercise and fresh air and some good eating if you're quick and accurate with your shotgun. I leave you with this thought from Anne Bradstreet, who wrote in the 1600s, "If we had no winter, the spring would not be so pleasant. If we did not sometimes taste of adversity, prosperity would not be so welcome."
Welcome back to the Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge, and we're talking to senior meteorologist Mark Breen of the Fairbanks Museum. So, Mark, what are your expectations for, say, weather trends in 2025 for Vermont and New Hampshire?
Yeah, so one of the things that I found most challenging is that you can forecast the next day or two.
Right.
You get out into a week or two, and it gets a little bit more general. And beyond that, we really, it becomes quite a challenge. But one of the things that's going on currently, and this fits into the forecast for the winter and what we've seen so far, it has to do with the ocean temperatures in the Pacific, something called La Nina, which is cold water in the tropics of the Pacific that influences the global pattern. And for us, the winters tend to switch. So in other words, we get these spells of cold and snow, and then suddenly it switches and you get a thaw. And then it goes back again. And so that's the kind of weather that we're anticipating this winter. That's what's been happening so far. I don't really see any reason to change that. Now, in the summers, this kind of pattern actually is a little bit more favorable to hurricanes. So one of the things that we'll be watching is, will this enhance the hurricane season? And that, of course, is going to influence our weather later in the summer and into the fall, when some of those storms sometimes head northward, so we'll be watching that. One of the things that I have also found, and this goes back into the museum weather records themselves, is that very rarely does the weather repeat itself from one year to the next. So in other words, the very, very rainy weather that we had this summer, not likely to be a rainy weather, a rainy summer this summer. It's a very simple projection, but it's all based on weather facts.
Remind us, too, because you mentioned La Nina, but there's also El Nino. So what's the difference between the two?
Right. So these are based on the water temperature near the equator in the Pacific. And El Nino is warm. La Nina is cold, and this is something that goes back, it actually, El Nino means the Christ child. It was something that Peruvian fishermen, so we're going back into the 1800s, but in Peru, the fishermen noticed that there was the spell of warmer water temperatures, and of course that changed the fishing. So that was what they were concerned with. What we found out later on was that it was actually influencing global weather patterns. And so scientists have been studying that a great deal more. And that really was just starting when I was just starting. So a lot has been learned over the past 30 and 40 years. And so that really influences a global picture and, as a result, affects our weather here locally.
How do you think weather science will evolve in the next decade, since we're talking some predictions?
Yeah, so
here?
one of the things, and I hate to use this now, it seems already a pretty worn phrase, but AI, artificial intelligence, is definitely having an influence on things. Just what sort of influence, I'm not entirely certain. Like I said, I still lean toward looking out the window, so that can't be necessarily replaced. And yet at the same time, maybe I will, as I mentioned before, I'll get these details that I'll be able to fit into the forecast and make the forecast more useful for people. So I think that's one of the big things. The other thing, and this is something that I've noticed really on through the decades, is that computer models in general get a little bit better as you go further out. So in other words, we will become more accurate, say 5, 6, 7 days from now, much more accurate than we are right now. Right now, you get past about 7 days and the accuracy drops down to almost 50%.
Great. Perfect. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, Mark Breen is also going to be able to give us our weekend Outdoor Edge forecast. So stay tuned for that.
It's the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge on YKR Country.
This winter, warm up your business with Northeast Kingdom Online. Trying to create your own online marketing can feel colder than a moose's morning breath. But fret not, we have the hot cocoa to warm your business. Our team of snowbound marketers will whip up a strategy that'll melt your competition faster than a snowbank in April. From digital marketing to website design, social media management, and more, we'll help you create an online strategy that will help your business thrive. Visit northeastkingdomonline.com. Let's get this sleigh ride started.
This is Bob McGee from Wild Vermont Customs. From mud to snow, water to road, powered or pedaled, our custom fabrication shop can make it look great. With paint, hydro dip, powder coat, media blasting your restoration project, metal artwork, or your hunting trophies. Come see what we can do for you. Gabe, what can we do for the hunting trophies?
We can dip Euro skulls, make custom plaques or mounts.
Wild Vermont Customs, East Redgate, Vermont. On the web at wildvt.com.
Check out our Facebook page for pictures.
All right, we are back. We've been talking to Mark Breen, the senior meteorologist over at the Fairbanks Museum and Planetarium. And before we jump into the weekend forecast, Mark, can you share a story where you feel as though that Can you share a story where your work had some meaningful impact on the community?
Well, let's see. I guess one of the things that happens, this is going back many, many years ago, but obviously finding out what the weather is going to do is very helpful, but I also think it's helpful for folks to realize that because we do have a little bit more time that we spend talking about the weather than a lot of radio stations do. And so, our Friday conversations, for example, are, I think it's a great way to get into some details. So we're able to sometimes explain why we didn't get the forecast right. And I think that is very helpful. So an example of that goes back into March of 1984. I remember forecasting 6 to 12 inches of snow. So I woke up the next morning and there was 6 inches of snow. So I thought, all right, my forecast is right. So I went out to shovel out the car to get into work. And as I was shoveling, by the time I had finished shoveling this, it's about a 50-foot driveway, I went back to my car and there was another 6 inches of snow. It was like, wow, it's really snowing. So got in the car, drove almost to the museum. As I was driving on the interstate, I was thinking, boy, they really haven't plowed these roads. Well, I didn't realize it was snowing at about 4 inches per hour.
Wow.
And so when I realized they were plowing it, because when I got to the off-ramp, they hadn't plowed the off-ramp, and my little Chevette at the time ran into about 2 feet of snow, and, well, it didn't go very far. So I had to walk the rest of the way in, actually stopped at a person's house and did a forecast without any information other than I had walked through 2 to 3 feet of snow and did a forecast at that point. But obviously I was talking about the fact that, the weather changed even during the course of the night. So just a good example that, the weather isn't a perfect science, and I think that's a valuable lesson in itself.
And so what resources or tools would you recommend for individuals who are interested in tracking and understanding local weather on their own?
Well, there are now, just tremendous, information on the internet. So I would definitely, suggest people that are really interested, that is certainly one of the things that I use in terms of getting my information. The National Weather Service is a great place to get started because they have basically access to all the data and lots of different forecasts. But another thing that I found, and this is one of the things that I talked about, just what's going on in your own backyard, having something to measure the air pressure or the wind direction and so forth. So one of those individual weather stations, just tracking it day after day after day, you get a much better sense of how the weather changes.
All right, we are going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll have Mark Breen give us the weekend Outdoor Edge forecast.
St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram asks, do your outdoor adventures take you to where you wish you had a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive? At St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram, explore their vast inventory of adventure-savvy four-wheel drives and all-wheel drive vehicles, ready for you to drive at home. Plus, every St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram deal includes the Big Deal Plus, which is a 2-year unlimited scheduled maintenance plan, which includes free state inspections for life. Stop in today in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, or shop St. Johnsbury Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram online at stjohnsburycdjr.com.
At Red Clover Bikes in Fairleigh, Vermont, we know that a bike is more than just a ride. It's an extension of who you are. With financing available on top-tier Trek bicycles, e-bikes, and a team that's all about making biking accessible and fun, we help you make the most of the roads and the trails that make this little spot of heaven special. Whether you're looking to enhance your bike's performance or need expert advice on the latest cycling gear, we've got you covered. So come visit us in Fairleigh at Red Clover Bikes, where your adventure begins.
Gateway Sports there in Wells River is a gun store that will speak your language. Gary has one of the biggest selections of firearms that you'll ever need. Just take a short ride down to Gateway Sports. They are in Wells River on Route 302, just before the bridge. Don't blink, because you might miss it. You'll find Gary. He'll treat you right. I've known him for a long time, and he always will.
Stop by to see what the daily specials are. Stock up on your favorite ammunition, including some of the hard-to-get stuff, and ask about how you can get started reloading ammo yourself. yourself at Gateway Sports, Wells River.
All right, and we are back. And as promised, I believe senior meteorologist Mark Breen has a weekend weather forecast for us.
Yes, and the word is cold. We've got some snow showers that will be drying up during the course of the overnight tonight. And then for Friday, you can look for a mix of clouds and sun, but it's going to be a breezy, chilly day. It's January, nothing unusual. Temperatures will be in the 20s. By Friday night, it'll drop down into the single digits and low teens, and then Saturday, I think a lot of clouds or maybe some mountain snow showers. Temperatures only teens to near 20. By Saturday night, it drops into the single numbers, and Sunday, in spite of some sunshine, highs only in the teens. Looks like that chilly weather will continue into early next week.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mark. You know, it's been a genuine pleasure to start our new year having a conversation with the Mark Breen.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. You know, Josh, it's one of the things that I love doing. I love talking about the weather.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And that was a conversation I had with Mark Breen. And as you heard earlier too, we also had Gary Moore's Thoughts on the Outdoor segments that is now back for 2025. So we are going to be jumping into, in the next couple minutes, we're going to be handing the reins over to Coach Wozni, and Ryan Farguson and Trevor, who is now there at the Oxbow versus Rivendell game, and that's going to be the Oxbow versus Rivendell game, girls game, and that's going to be playing in the next couple minutes. So if you haven't already, please make sure that you download the app. We have an app. You can see all of the Outdoor Edge is there on demand. Every episode that we've done in the past is available to listen to on demand there. And also you can be able to see on demand all of the basketball games that we've previously broadcast there. And to keep you all in the loop as well, so this Saturday, we're going to have a BMU versus Oxbow game, and that's going to be at 1 p.m. That's going to be the girls' game. And then next Friday, we are going to be having Rivendell. We're going to be at Rivendell. It'll be Rivendell versus Green Mountain. That's going to be at a 7 p.m. game. And so stay tuned for that. So thank you so much for tuning in to the latest, starting off 2025 with a bang, with getting a basketball game and an Outdoor Edge all in one night. So this is a feast for all of our listeners. So thank you so much for tuning in. And we hand it over to Robin.